Hello, it's John Heaton, and I'm gonna probably will become a thread now. I'm gonna review individual Beatles tracks. Uh, Again, I've chosen another one from Abbey Road as we're approaching the 50th anniversary, and we're all so excited about it. And I don't know how many of you, like me, can't wait for the release, so you dug out the 2009 remaster and started listening to that in anticipation. And I'm not, to be brutally honest, not sure what the 2019 remix can add. Because first of all, it goes without saying that the original 69 album was incredibly well produced by George Martin. The 2009 and the 1987 CD and the 2009 were maybe more less background hiss and stuff like that, but not necessarily improvements. So it'll be interesting to see what Giles Martin comes up with, because his White Album was pretty decent. Not every track was better, but a lot of it was interesting, and he decided not to play safe and to do something a little different. So it'll be interesting to see how daring he's going to be. But anyway, I'm going to focus today's review on Maxwell's Silver Hammer, which has come in for a lot of stick throughout the years. Apparently John hated it, said it was granny music. George said it was so fruity. Ringo says if there's one reason why the Beatles split up, it was Maxwell. I think John might have said that too. Apparently Paul worked George and Ringo to death for 3 days, which is not actually a very long amount of time, considering how they made 9 months or 6 months making Sergeant Pepper. I don't think 3 days is unreasonable. And when McCartney was asked about this in a Mojo interview, he was a bit defensive and said, "Well, so what if it did take 3 days?" I think a lot of the criticism of this track is unjustified. Yes, it's very commercial, but it's incredibly catchy, and Paul sings it superbly, and the melody is utterly infectious. And people have criticised the lyrics for being a little bit sick, the subject matter. But it was recorded in July '69, before the Charles Manson murders, so it's not as if he was writing it on the back of that or anything. 9th, 10th, 11th July, and then 6th August '69. I think the Manson murders happened later in August '69, from memory. Just going to read you Ian MacDonald's view of Maxwell, just to give you the perspective of some writers. If any single recording shows why the Beatles broke up, it is Maxwell's Silver Hammer. Compulsively fertile in melody and fascinated by music's formal beauties, McCartney could, when unrestrained by Lennon's cynicism, fatally neglect meaning and expression. This ghastly miscalculation, of which there are countless equivalents on his garrulous sequence of solo albums, represents by far his worst lapse of taste under the auspices of the Beatles. The cheery tale of a homicidal maniac was written towards the end of the recording for the Beatles in October '68 and tried out then and later during the Let It Be sessions in January. According to Lennon, who despised the song, McCartney was convinced that given the right production it was a potential hit single, and so flogged it to death in the studio in a pedantic effort to perfect it. As he had with Obladi Oblada, he merely ended up driving his colleagues mad. Thus, Abbey Road embraces both extremes of McCartney, the clear-minded, sensitive caretaker of the Beatles in You Never Give Me Your Money and the Long Medley, and the immature egotist who frittered away the group's patience and solidarity on sniggering nonsense like this. Well, as I've said in previous reviews, Ian MacDonald's opinions he's entitled to, but he's way too critical of a song like this, and he also slags off Across the Universe, by the way, and Birthday, among others. So take what he says with a pinch of salt. Just thought I'd read it to you because it is reflective of some of the more snooty members of the music press or the public who tend to regard serious songs from John and George as gospel and anything remotely commercial or throwaway lyrically as trite from McCartney. And the same feeling would pervade throughout the early 70s when McCartney's early solo work with Wings was disparaged for being lyrically inadequate. Again, missing the point that a single like Another Day was just a joy to behold. You listen to that song now and it's just one of his best solo stroke Wings singles. Great melodic bass playing from Paul as throughout the Abbey Road album, and the great early use of Moog synthesizer, played I think mainly by George Harrison, who he'd used the Moog synthesizer on Electronic Sounds to no great effect, but on Abbey Road it was used very tastefully on Because, on Maxwell, and I think on Here Comes the Sun. And some great guitar work from George. Those chords he plays throughout the song really are very uplifting. Ringo even admitted that although he disliked the song when they were recording it, he ended up humming it in the lift and was cursing McCartney for always writing a catchy melody. John, of course, called it granny music. Well, I'm old enough now not to be quite a granddad, but what's wrong with granny music? I think the wide appeal of the Beatles, appealing to the young, the middle-aged and the old, was one of their endearing features. And George even, maybe slightly reluctantly, said, yeah, we worked that song to death, but we ended up doing quite a good job. So I think Abbey Road is memorable for having very diverse songs on it, in terms of style, in terms of lyric, in terms of production, and well, production's pretty similar perhaps throughout. It's quite slick in its production, and but very well produced. And I was listening to Maxwell in the car this morning and just thoroughly enjoying it as a track, and I really can't understand all the negative stuff which is said about it. So I thought I'd do a video to defend what I think is if not an absolute classic McCartney Beatles track, a pretty damn strong album track. And interesting to hear the remake coming out in a month's time, but I don't think it's going to improve dramatically. George Martin did a superb job, and as I said, George Harrison and Ringo contributed. John was absent from the track. They contributed superb, and so those three made a very good fist of it. And so what if it took 3 days? So thank you for watching. See you next time.